For those of you who don't know me, I'm Orla Barry. I'm the Head of Qualifications, Information and Learning Opportunities at QQI. And one of the areas of responsibility for my team is the Irish Register of Qualifications. And we've just gone through this. Most of you know what it is, and some of you are still trying to figure out how it might help you in your work. So hopefully we can answer some of those questions for you today. So we did have a poll for any of you who are joining us late. Unfortunately, that poll has closed now, but we'll progress on with the presentation. So the aim of today's session is to give an introduction to the Irish Register of Qualifications, an overview of the information that is published in that register, and then to help you understand what the role the IRQ might be able to play in helping you confirm if a provider is externally quality assured by QQI, how you can confirm if a qualification is included in the framework, and the types of information about qualifications that are published on the register. So hopefully that meets some of your expectations for what you might get out of today. And I'm hoping that we will have some time for some questions and answers towards the end if anyone has any burning questions. But we also do have a chat where you could pop questions in and a Q&A function, and other members of my team will keep an eye on the types of questions that are coming into us. So feel free to pop something into the chat or the Q&A if you have any questions you'd like us to answer. So I am going to do just a very brief introduction to QQI and its responsibilities. I'm sure most of you are aware who we are, but just for those of you who might not. So we are a state agency. We promote the quality, integrity and reputation of Ireland's tertiary education and training system. We ensure that learners achieve qualifications that are valued nationally and internationally, and we provide trusted information on the qualifications included in the framework. And the Irish Register of Qualifications is the main tool that we use to provide that trusted information. So it's an essential tool for QQI, and it's also a key part of our new strategy in terms of developing that IRQ to give more information about the National Framework of Qualifications to ensure that the NFQ is an authoritative source of information about qualifications in Ireland. So we have three kind of distinct identities in QQI. We're a quality assurance agency, we're an awarding body in our own right, and then we're also the qualifications authority with responsibility for the implementation of the framework. And the Irish Register of Qualifications is quite key in promoting and communicating our roles across those identities. So in terms of our responsibilities as a QA agency, all of the entities that are kind of quality assured by QQI are published in the IRQ. In our own capacity as an awarding body, we validate programs leading to QQI awards, and all of those are published in the IRQ. And then in our capacity in terms of implementing the framework, the IRQ is the most tangible version of the National Framework of Qualifications. The framework itself is quite conceptual in that it doesn't really exist, but it's the IRQ that gives life to our framework. And as we review our framework and kind of progress forward with it, it's the IRQ that will ensure that the NFQ itself is a cornerstone of the Irish education and training system. So this is just a funding statement to advise you that we are the National Europass Centre at QQI, and we're also the coordination point for the EQF, which is the European Qualifications Framework. And the register that we have, the Irish Register of Qualifications, fits into the European priorities around producing databases or registers of qualifications to promote qualifications in Europe. And we use some of the funding we receive in our capacity as the Europass Centre and the coordination point to promote the IRQ. And then equally, the IRQ is linked into European databases. So there is a Europass platform called the Qualifications Dataset Register, and we publish our information from the IRQ to that register to ensure that our qualifications have visibility at the European level as well. So in terms of the register, QQI itself is required by legislation to maintain a database which provides information about awards included in the framework. This legislation specifies that we will tell you the name of the award and the awarding body, the NFQ level, the award type and class. We're also required to publish information about the programmes that lead to those awards in the National Framework of Qualifications. We're also permitted to publish any other programmes that we think is appropriate. At the moment, the Irish Register of Qualifications is limited to qualifications included in the framework and the programmes that lead to them. That will change slightly in the short term. We are starting to regulate English language providers and their programmes, and we will be publishing information about English language programmes on the Irish Register of Qualifications. So we will have a widening of the information on there, which will improve the visibility of regulated programmes for learners. And then as part of that, we may widen out further, and we're looking at that as part of some of our redevelopment activities. So the register at the moment is an authoritative list of qualifications included in the framework, And it's the final step of the joint sectoral protocol between QQI and the designated awarding bodies, which are the universities, the technological universities, the institutes of technology, and the RCSI. And that sounds very technical, and it is. The joint sectoral protocol is quite technical, but that really just describes how qualifications of the universities and the technological universities and the institutes of technology become included in the framework. And the final step of that is publishing them in the Irish Register of Qualifications. Currently, we have over 12,000 qualifications listed in the register and about 14,000 programmes. And as I said, it is linked to the Europass Qualifications Dataset Register, and the Irish Register of Qualifications is based on the European Learning Model. The European Learning Model is just a data schema which allows for full interoperability of information about qualifications and programmes across all types of institutions. So the fact that the Irish Register is built on the European Learning Model means that if all of our systems were built on that European Learning Model, we would have full interoperability of data, and that will be the long-term vision for how qualifications information is developed in Ireland and in Europe. But us having this is the first step towards moving towards the implementation of that European Learning Model, and is a positive for how we relate Irish qualifications back into that European setting. The role, scope and purpose of the IRQ, it can be a little bit confusing. Those of you who engage with us are probably familiar with Qualifax, which is also a database of courses and programs that QQI is responsible for. And the key differentiation for us is that Qualifax is designed with learners in mind and those who support learners. So people who are trying to find their next learning opportunity or who are trying to understand what are the options available to them, Qualifax is really designed to support that learning journey. Whereas the Irish Register of Qualifications has a slightly different focus. We would view that it's primarily a verification tool for those who are seeking to verify qualifications, awarding bodies and providers. And the types of people who might use the IRQ are people like admissions officers, access officers, credential evaluators, NARIC or comparable services, RPL officers, immigration officers, recruiters, employers, for example. And sometimes you might think, well, why would we be concerned about verifying qualifications, awarding bodies and providers? And the reason mainly is the education system is getting more and more complicated. And the fact that we have over 12,000 qualifications published in the register speaks to the volume of types of education and training that's happening in the state. And even when we look at when we launched the register back in 2020, we only had 5,000 qualifications published in the register at that time. So that's showing significant growth. So that level of complexity means it's harder for people who are looking at qualifications to understand whether they're legitimate or whether, what level they're at, were they awarded by somebody that has been externally quality assured. And what the register is doing is trying to put all that information in one place to support people to better understand the types of qualifications that might come across their desk for a variety of reasons. The other reason that it's important about the Irish Register is that our learners and workers are very mobile. Irish people are great at travelling. As we all know, you'll find an Irish pub in any random town you go to, which speaks to the mobility of Irish people. And it's important that the qualifications they hold that they received in Ireland can be understood in whatever country they go to. And again, we would see the register as being a key tool for other jurisdictions to confirm the legitimacy of the awarding bodies, the providers and the qualifications that they're looking at. So that's the primary focus of the register. Where the information comes from is really important for you to understand. So those designated awarding bodies that I mentioned earlier, so that's the universities, the technological universities, the institutes of technology and the RCSI, they're responsible for uploading their own data to the Irish Register of Qualifications. They typically do that once a year, but they are invited to do it twice a year in June and December, and they're able to make that and upload that information at any time during the year that suits them. So any information that we have it's their responsibility to make sure it's accurate and up to date. For QQI, in our capacity as an awarding body, that data is updated in real time as a final step of the validation of programmes. But it is important to understand that the IRQ is not real-time data. It's not entirely up to date at any given point. It's more of an accuracy from when that institution last provided an update of information. So there may be times that you would need to source information directly from an institution because the IRQ might not verify what you're seeking. And the other thing that's important to note is that the way the IRQ is currently constructed is that it does not include historical data. So if an institution uploads information, that wipes the information from the previous year. So it's only ever accurate 1 year at a time. But I am going to tell you later on a little bit about some redevelopment work we're doing to hopefully improve the availability and currency of data on the Irish Register, and then also to build some of that historical data. Because for us, particularly for people like employers or recruiters, they're going to be receiving qualifications that could be 10, 20, even older. And how can you verify the legitimacy of that information if there isn't information on the register? So we are looking to improve that. So examples of times that the IRQ has kind of come into play. Shortly after the technological universities were established, a Chinese learner went back home to China and presented their qualification as certified by the new technological university. The Chinese government went on to the Irish Register of Qualifications and couldn't find any evidence of the technological university because it had all happened so quickly. It was still the Institute of Technology that was listed on there, and they asked us to confirm that technological university had the authority to issue awards. We've also received queries from the New Zealand Qualifications Authority to confirm the NFQ level of particular teaching qualifications, as those who hold a level 9 qualification teaching in New Zealand get a higher salary than those who hold level 8 qualification. So we can use the register to point to the actual NFQ level of the qualifications they're looking at. We had a Brazilian learner return to Brazil and seek to get their fees refunded to them on the basis that they'd undertaken an appropriate programme, and the government asked us to confirm that Trinity College Dublin was an actual university, which I think we thought was interesting because Trinity is probably one of our more famous institutions globally. But again, just speaking to how complicated the education and training industry is getting, not everyone is as au fait with the Irish system as they might have been 20 years ago. And then we often get learners seeking to confirm the NFQ levels of various qualifications. What do different award titles mean, so that they can better understand the study opportunities that are available to them, or the types of certification they've received in terms of how to explain their qualifications when they're either applying for jobs or applying for further study. So those are just some very practical examples of times people have used the IRQ, or we have used the IRQ to help people solve their problems. So in terms of the information that the IRQ publishes, from providers and awarding bodies, we publish information about 222 different providers that are providing programmes leading to awards included in the National Framework of Qualifications. If someone is listed on the Irish Register of Qualification in terms of being a provider or an organisation, it means that they are offering programmes leading to NFQ awards and have been quality assured by QQI. And that's true for the public universities. They're subject to external quality assurance by QQI at institutional level, versus those kind of programs that we validate provider by provider. Those programs are subject to a different level of quality assurance, but anyone who's listed on there has been assessed by QQI in some capacity. I am going to use the IRQ a little bit shortly after the presentation, so you'll see it, but you can search by filtering. So you can find them based on what types of qualifications they might be offering. It's in alphabetical order, so you can go directly to them, or you can search in type them into the search bar. And then each provider has its own list, its own entry on the register, and that will include a full list of all of the programs that they're offering that are leading to NFQ awards. So that's one way, and that's the type of information we list about providers. For QQI validated providers, it'll also have information about the scope of validation. It'll have information about the reports that QQI has produced in validating programs or approving their initial access to validation as well. So there's lots of good information on there. And then in terms of qualifications and programs, so we have two different listings, one for qualifications and one for programs. It can be quite difficult to know when to use one over the other. And I'm sorry that I don't have a simple answer, because different institutions approach kind of qualifications versus programs differently. We have more entries in the program section. So there are 14,000 programs versus 12,000 qualifications. So it's probably sensible to start your search in programs because it just has more information. And again, you can search by title in the search bar and it'll auto populate what qualifications are under there. So if you search Masters in Public Policy, it'll automatically populate with different titles. So you'll find the one you're looking for more quickly. Or you can also use our filters, which would be NFQ levels and different awarding bodies, and that will bring you to a qualification. And again, I'll show you a little bit of that. And again, you might not find what you're looking for. And there are lots of reasons why a record might be missing. So you should contact the institution directly just to confirm whatever you are seeking to confirm if it's not listed on the register, because they'll be able to tell you if there's information that's relevant to you. And then in terms of how can it be used, so new providers are being validated by QQI regularly. and they're offering programs leading to NFQ awards. There might be a provider you've never heard of, because we have lots of small community and voluntary providers and small private and independent providers. So if you haven't heard of a provider before, check the IRQ and it'll tell you whether they're quality assured by QQI. And for our universities and our technological universities, people are much more familiar with them. You probably don't need to go to the IRQ to check that they're a legitimate provider, but there might be smaller providers that you've never come across before, and you might find out more information about them on the Irish Register, which gives you a bit more confidence or assurance about the types of qualifications or programs that people are undertaking. Award titles can be quite confusing. You might have received CVs or applications from people that say certificate in whatever, and that certificate could be anywhere from a level 6 to a level 9. And unless the person tells you on their application whether it's a 6 or a 9, you can't tell. But again, the register would help you find that out. So if you popped the title of the award into the Irish Register of Qualifications, it'll tell you everything about that qualification, including the level. So just if you do get award titles that don't make it as clear about the levels, again, major awards are easier. Bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, postgraduate diplomas, we're often quite familiar with those. But some of the smaller qualifications particularly, and this is about my next point, the advent of micro-credentials. So people are presenting with more and more different types of qualifications and programs, and the Irish Register of Qualifications might be a useful place for you to confirm more about that award if you're interested. And again, not all micro-credentials lead to awards in the framework, and if you look on the IRQ, it'll give you the answer about whether it's an award included in the NFQ or not. Again, if it's offered by someone who's quality assured by QQI, that might offer you enough assurances about them, even if the micro-credential isn't leading to a formal award in the framework. So you can use the IRQ to just give yourself a bit more information about the provider, the programme and the award, and then you can go directly to their website to do a bit more digging if you need to, but it might have given you the assurances that you were after. So that's kind of a high level of what's on there. And as I said, in a couple of minutes, I'll take you through some examples of how you might search it. But I did mention that we're trying to improve the IRQ. And for those of you who have used it, hopefully you're thinking that's a great idea, because we do think that there's ways we can improve the IRQ and make it more usable. And for us, it's really important to increase the use of the register, because that will improve the information on there. The more people who want to use the register, the easier it is for us to justify adding more and more information, which gives greater transparency to the types of programs and awards that are on there. So there's lots of changes to the education and training landscape, as you're probably aware, which would encourage us to improve the quality and quantity of information on the register. So we have a new international education mark, which is about the code of practice for the provision of education and training to international learners. So we'll be publicising information about those bodies that have been awarded the IEM through the Irish Register. We're establishing a new type of awarding body. So there'll be new awarding bodies entering into the Irish market. So these will be called listed awarding bodies. So we need to be able to include them on the register and their awards. There is the capacity for QQI to delegate authority to certain providers to operate as delegated authority awarding bodies. So again, we need to have capacity for communicating the difference between the different types of awarding bodies that are out there. There's also another European register that we're not currently linked to, which is the database of external quality assurance results. And we'd be quite keen to link not only the IRQ to Europass, but also to DECAR, again, giving greater visibility of our quality assured qualifications and providers in Europe. We want to make the IRQ compliant with the Open Data Directive, because if the IRQ were published as open data, we would be able to do much more trend analysis and research into the types of changes and trends we're seeing in qualifications and programs in Ireland, which we think would be really interesting. We've seen new types of qualifications come into the system, so things like tertiary degrees. We don't have a way of very clearly outlining tertiary degrees on the IRQ currently, as in the idea that someone does some part of their qualification in their education and training board, and then they go on to a university or a higher education provider. So we'd like to be able to show those pathways. And then things like micro-credentials, offering greater clarity about those things that are in the framework versus those that are not, and how people might be able to use the information that we provide to make determinations about those types of programs. So those are the changes to the landscape that will inform our developments for the register. And the other thing, the more people who use it, there's more people for us to get feedback from, to ensure that whatever changes we make meet the needs of the people who may use the IRQ in the future. So our objectives are very much around improving the quality and quantity of information on the register, improve the upload experience of our awarding bodies. As I said, awarding bodies have to give their data to us. It's quite a cumbersome process at the minute. They only do it once a year. We'd like to see that more frequently. So we want to improve that upload experience to then improve the quality and quantity of information. We want to have an option for QQI to edit and update some data so we can reduce the burden on DABs. Sometimes there's just minor errors on there, and it would be great if we could just clean those up quickly and make it the information more accurate. We want to have a more functional professional register that we can publicise more widely. This is the first publicising event we've had for the register. So hopefully this will be the first of many, but we hope that the register improves as we go. We want to be able to build an archive, so to publish legacy and historical data so that there is more usable information on there. As I said, we want to increase the use of the register, but also to improve the user experience for those who are trying to use the register. We think learners will benefit from a redeveloped IRQ because they will hopefully be able to understand how their qualifications relate to each other and access RPL and access transfer and progression. And then, as I mentioned, we want to have ongoing connections with European platforms to maximise Irish participation in European level projects. So there's lots of reasons why we would keep improving the IRQ, and we're at the very early steps of that journey. And as I said, it would be great if we could get feedback from people who either have used it or those who'll start using it after chatting to us today. So that is the end of my presentation. As I said, I will share the IRQ and we'll do a little bit of a play around with it to show how it works. But I do have one more poll to see if, after hearing a little bit about what we had to say about how the register can be used, if you think you would use the register now that you know how it works. And also, if anyone has any questions, we could take a couple of minutes for questions now before we do the kind of play around with the register.
Orla, we've one question in the chat there asking, can private providers submit a programme for recognition on the IRQ, or does it have to be one of the mentioned awarding bodies?
Thanks, Alice. So a private provider can submit their programme to QQI for validation. And then if it were validated, it would appear on the register. But at the moment, the Irish Register is limited to those providers who are offering programmes leading to NFQ awards. So it would need to be a provider applying to QQI for validation. There's no way to apply to have your programme into the register. The register is either reserved for those who have awarding powers or the direct upload from QQI awards information. So I will hopefully show the results of, I don't seem to be able to have a show results. Anyway, 72% said they think the IRQ could be useful to their work, which is great. And I see I have a hand up from Julie O'Donnell. Julie, are you able to unmute yourself to ask your question? Great.
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much, Orla. And I have been using the IRQ and I think it's great. It's a very impressive piece of work. So my question was going to be, how often do you do an audit and update it? And the QQI said, imagine there's a lot of work on your side, but you've answered that already. So, and I know there's, and it's really cool to hear about all the work that's going on, the upgrading of it and the plans for that. There's one thing I wanted to ask. The challenges around this is probably a bit of a big question, but just to be interested if you've anything to say around the challenges for micro credentials and for the IRQ. Are you planning? Do you have a project plan around how that's going to be incorporated?
So our project plan around micro credentials is quite multifaceted, as I imagine you can kind of appreciate. So there's a piece around policy that we have to look at as well. So to an extent, the register already accommodates micro credentials in the sense that the NFQ itself accommodates micro credentials, that we've had small qualifications since its inception. But those are limited to kind of the minor awards, the special purpose awards and the supplemental awards. And QQI hasn't issued specific policy around the explosion of micro credentials. And we have seen some micro credentials be what we call off framework, so not leading to awards in the framework. So we have to do a piece of policy work around differentiating between those. We have a green paper on micro credentials that's due to be published in June, which will start to explore some of those. And we are reviewing the framework itself, which will also account for whether we want to create new award types for micro credentials. And then the other piece, as part of the redevelopment of the Irish Register of Qualifications, we are proposing that it would move to being an Irish Register of Qualifications and quality assured programmes. So for our designated awarding bodies and their linked providers, there would be a capacity to include information about their programmes that are micro credentials not leading to awards. So that's part of building out the IRQ, to have programmes that we think are appropriate to be additional to the qualifications. That's quite a technical answer. I'm confident, Julie, you probably understood that, but we might have some participants who aren't as au fait with the framework who maybe didn't understand bits of that. But it's just to say we are considering how best to do it, and their publication in the IRQ will be taken into consideration with all of the policy developments as well.
Yeah, it's a big piece of work. And just one other quick thing. The listed awarding bodies that that's the first I heard about that. So what kind of entities would you be expecting those to be?
So listed awarding bodies is again a very technical thing. In the legislation, they're defined very helpfully as an awarding body that appears in the list. We have widened out that definition to being professional, technical, sectoral, and international awarding bodies already operating in the state who do not have awarding powers. So the easiest kind of grouping to look at is in the FET space. So we have a number of UK awarding bodies already operating through the ETBs, people that you'd be very familiar with, like City and Guilds, Pearson, the ITEC, beauty qualifications, and the BTEC. So those are kind of a suite of qualifications that we would expect to get included. So they would be established as listed awarding bodies. We then have professional bodies like the accountants, the Irish Insurance Institute, the Irish Tax Institute, and potentially people like the King's Inns, the Law Society. And then we have people like St. Patrick's Pontifical University, who did have awarding powers till about the 1970s and then lost their awarding powers. So they would likely apply. And then other ones that we know about are people like the Open University, who operate quite a bit in the state, but don't have awarding powers in the state. So that's what we would expect. We do have a requirement on the listed awarding body scheme that any established awarding bodies have a history of 20 years of operating in the state. So it's about providing access to the framework for those awarding bodies already here.
All right, cool. Okay, thanks a million, Orla.
Thanks, Julie. Did anyone else have any questions they wanted to ask us about the register or anything else I might have said? Eduarda. Can you unmute yourself, Eduarda?
Hi, Hola, how are you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
Good to see you. Hola, I have just one question concerning micro-credentials and the 3 classes of awards that you just mentioned. I'd like just to ask, are all those qualifications or micro-credentials, I don't know, that are now currently available? I saw yesterday, I was checking and I found 4,301 results just by selecting those 3 classes. So no differentiation in terms of levels. Are they all micro-credentials? That's a very simple question. Or are there other non-micro-credentials qualifications also already included within those 4,301?
Yes, so there are other things included in that 4,301.
Okay.
So that would cover off anything that's minor, supplemental, and special purpose. They could be larger than micro-credentials. We broadly define micro-credentials in Ireland as being less than 30 ECTS. But I think we have around 4,000 things that are smaller than 30 ECTS in the IRQ already.
Okay, and this means then they can be considered micro-credentials, and they are all in those 3 classes.
Yeah, so we would say that those are the award type descriptors that should be used to develop micro-credentials. But as part of our policy work, we'll look at whether we should have something more specific about micro-credentials rather than using those 3 award type descriptors.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
No problem.
Good to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
Thank you.
Did anyone have any other questions? Okay, if not, I might just share the Irish Register of Qualifications with you for those of you who might not have seen it before or haven't seen it in a while. So this is what the homepage of the register looks like. We have had people tell us that they're not sure they're in the right place because it kind of lands onto the homepage directly and doesn't give you much guidance, but this is what it looks like. And as you can see, we have qualifications, providers, and courses. So I told you a little bit about the providers. So if you click on the providers tab, you'll see there's 222 results. So that's the 222 providers that are confirmed as offering programs leading to NFQ awards. You'll see we have filters on the left. So you could filter by location if you were interested in learning about what providers are operating in your area, or you could do it by higher ed versus further ed. You could look at type, so the different types of providers that might be there. So community voluntary versus an institute of technology, for example. Or if you wanted to pull out particular awarding bodies, you can click on them there as well. And then equally, you can type in to the search bar and it'll tell you what universities. You can click on University College Dublin. And as I said, if you go into a provider, it'll give you the list of courses that are offered by them. So you can see there, it's quite a long list in the case of this particular awarding body. I'll keep scrolling, but this is one way of looking at what they're offering. And then there's just a little bit of information around here around their locations, if there are quality assurance reports or not. I might go back and show you a QQI provider to show you that. So if we click on here, you'll see that there's a QA approval report from 2019. They have a link to their quality assurance procedures, which means you've got some information about the provider there, which is useful. It tells you what sectors they operate in on their website. And then in terms of the other options, you can go into courses. And as I said, we have slightly more results here for over 14,000, and you can do it by NFQ level. You can look at the award classes. So Eduarda had mentioned she'd done a result based on the different award classes. So you can pick major awards or minor awards or whatever you might want to look at. And then again, you can go by location, or you can also do a sliding scale of ECTS. So if you're looking for those small things, so as we said, we think of 30. So you can see we've got 2,145 courses there for 0 to 30. So that's one way you can look at courses. You can pop in to the course and it might give you some information. So we have some information about this qualification here. You will see that there's lots of refer to providers, and that's one of the things we'll be looking at in the development of the framework to reduce that, so that there's more information readily available on the page you visit. And then in terms of qualifications, it's very similar. We have over 12,000. And again, similar options. You can go by NFQ level, award class. If I go on to awarding body there, I'll show you, it just pulls out the different qualifications offered by that awarding body. And again, you can then search within that. If you put in certificate, it'll auto-populate what certificates might be there. And you can either scroll down or keep typing. Would have been better if that pulled up a result, but those are some of the quirks to it. So you can see there, if you go into the certificate in return to learning, again, it tells you a little bit about that qualification. So that's just a little bit. I would recommend kind of playing around with the IRQ. That's how you get more familiar with how it works. And if you do have any feedback about how it works, we'd love to hear it. And we will be reaching out to people to give us some feedback as we redevelop the register. So hopefully those of you who've registered will be keen to engage with us on that. So that is the end of my little presentation. If anyone has any questions, we'd be delighted to answer them. And I can see Mary Stokes' comment there. Absolutely. The learners are better supported by people who can help them interpret information on the register. And that's why we would say the register is better used as a verification tool to verify kind of the legitimacy of qualifications and providers. And that Qualifax is a more useful tool for looking at learners' perspectives, and that guidance counsellors would often support them to navigate Qualifax as well. But if anyone has any questions, we've got just about 5 minutes to answer any of them. And if not, thanks very much to all of you who joined us today.